as a musician, one thing I've always practiced to is a click track, and to keep everyone on. They make fun of me. DJ's gonna laugh at this. Is okay, vocalists, let's work on this. Ready? 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, and that would just keep everyone on.
We were scared of the sticks.
Hey everybody, you're listening to God Spice with Greg and Kirti.
All right.
All right. So we played a game last time, Greg.
You're always playing games with me.
I mean,
Aren't
a
we
little
always
bit.
playing games?
It's a little bit fun.
It's not really. Not when you're on the receiving end.
Well, let me remind folks who tuned in with us last time. We played a game called We're Not Really Strangers.
We're not really strangers.
And Greg and I learned something about each
But you
other.
might be a stranger.
I mean,
Stranger danger.
I like that show, Stranger Things.
You do. Oh, we talked about that.
Which you went into nauseam about why you don't.
Yes.
But we
I did.
But the final card was us to write a note to each other.
Oh, yes.
Because
we
people
had to
don't write
note.
anything anymore
That is
to
true.
one another. And it's kind of a cute thing in this game to write a note to the other person.
Mm-hmm.
And we are going to read the note from each other.
That might be embarrassing.
And we may have to edit this part out. We don't know. But, you know.
Or leave it all in. Let's see. Where's your note? Who's going to read first?
So
We're going to rock, paper, scissors it, or
I
what?
hand wrote my note to you.
Oh, I'm supposed to read it. Mm-hmm. Oh, I thought we were supposed to read it to each other.
And then this is the one you wrote for me?
Yes, it is.
Okay. So who goes first?
I don't know. What do we do, like rock, paper, scissors?
Why don't you go first?
No, ladies first.
Oh, geez.
Yes.
Okay. What? Wait, this is like an essay.
It's not an essay.
You didn't handwrite it. It's supposed to be handwritten.
Because
Greg.
there wasn't time to handwrite it, and it wouldn't fit on this little piece of
Oh my
paper right
God.
here.
Oh my goodness. Wait, this is not fair because I just literally wrote a hand note. Like that fits on the sheet that they give.
Well, the font is big on that. That's all. And you said, and you gave me advice. You're like, write it as though you're in 6th grade writing it to me. So I did.
My dearest Kirti Venkata Rashmahara Juvara de Pita Naik.
I Googled the longest name in India and threw that and made that your middle name.
I don't have a middle name.
I know you don't. That's why I threw that in there.
You are so cute. Would you like to have lunch with me, then hang out at recess together? This already trumps my note. We can play tag, take turns on the monkey bars, and even get dizzy on the merry-go-round. That does happen sometimes still.
Uh-huh.
Don't worry if you fall. I'll be there to catch you. I wrote a poem for you. It's called You Are Beautiful. Greg.
What? You know that's what I do. I write
You're
poems.
not allowed to read my note.
Why not?
You cannot read my note.
I'm
after
going
this.
to read your note.
Kirti Naik, thou in my world, did you know that you are beautiful? The way you sway, the way you pray, enlightens me every day. The way you walk, the way you talk, brings treasure to life every step of the way. You beguile with your smile and your big brown eyes. They mesmerize, they touch the soul, truth be told, a fortunate style. Brought back from the Nile, I'm grateful you are in my life, and I want to let you know, inside and out, you are beautiful. I hate you right now.
Why do you hate me?
Because that's amazing.
That's a pretty poem.
That's a beautiful poem. And I'm not poetic like you, so this just... I've been trumped.
You have not been trumped.
I love the life we have built and continue to build every day with our girls. I feel very fortunate and know you do too. Kirti Naik, I love you. Stay glamorous. I will too. Greg, this is amazing.
Well, thank you.
Now just handwrite it.
You know I'm poetic when I
know,
write.
just handwrite it with your ugly chicken scratch handwriting, and then I could save it.
Why can you save that?
I'm going to save this, but I also want your handwriting.
Okay, I can handwrite it.
It was beautiful. Thank you.
It just wouldn't fit on this, so that's why I didn't do it.
Yeah, so don't read mine.
Why not? I'm going to read it.
No, please don't read it.
Why not?
Because it's so lame compared to what you just wrote.
No, it's not. This is gorgeous. I love it. Ready?
Oh, God. I don't even remember what I wrote.
Dear Greg. It's beautiful. Never in a million years did I think we'd actually end up together. I truly believed it would have to wait for another lifetime, given our previous circumstances. I am so happy you strangely entered my life. Albeit, is that crossed off or is that?
No, there's nothing grossed up.
This is like chicken scratch. I can't even read it. Albeit, piercing, changing, waxing, pits, squeeze is 100% worth the juice.
What?
What's this? Does that look like something was? Look at this right here. That looks like that was crossed out. Can you? I can't even read that. What is that?
Albeit hard and challenging.
Oh,
this
okay.
squeeze is 100% worth the juice.
Thank
Love,
you.
Kirti.
Thank you. That was pretty. Thank you. I couldn't.
You know I'm a woman of very few words.
I know. I know you are. Yes. No. Maybe. Kirti's vocabulary in 3 words.
Thank you, Greg. Thank you.
Yes. Did you like my note to you?
It was, yeah, that was pretty amazing.
It just flowed.
I'm like definitely jealous I don't have your writing skills. Those are pretty damn good writing skills.
Thank you. I wrote that just thinking of you.
For a guy who didn't like to go to school or read.
Don't say I didn't like going to school.
Or doesn't like writing.
No, I believe in education. I'm all about school and education. It's just
For others.
And I believe in being well educated. Hello. I do. I really do. And it's
But some people don't need the education.
no,
They're just naturally
I
smart.
just don't like to be in one spot for too many hours out of the day. That's my issue with an institution. Yes. And then the reading, coming back to reading, it's not that I don't like reading. I explained this in the last pod. All I do for a living is read, and as well as many other people, all we do is read and write. Then in my off time, all I do is read and write. So the last thing I want to do while I'm sitting on a beach on a vacation is pick up a book and read it. Although I do bring a book every single time, and it's like the same book I've been reading for probably several years now because I just haven't finished it yet because I haven't finished it. Although I've read it like 3 times already, but it's my beach book, and it like brings me to beach vibes every time. It's a Jimmy Buffett book.
Where you
I love Jimmy Buffett books on the
open it up
beach.
and then you stop reading after a couple pages.
Yeah, it's after maybe a couple paragraphs, but that's because we get distracted by something. Whether it's the kids want to go in the water, or if we're without the kids, we just go do something more fun. And so there's never really a moment to sit on the beach and just read. And I've never been the type of person that reads a book and like gets lost in a book and starts envisioning things. I just have issues where I read a page, forget exactly what I read, then I have to read it again.
We are
then
now
I get distracted.
in the Greg reading and
then
writing
I read
monologue.
it again. It's just unless it's like something that's a documentary or something for work or something that I need to do. That's the only time like I have the true reading comprehension because I could fly through it and just bang it out quickly.
Well, clearly when you're forced to write, you can write something.
Oh no, you know me. I'm not a fan of the process, the craft of writing. I just love the end product. So I work my way through the actual process just to get to the end product because I like the end product.
What? Cheers to your beautiful poem that you wrote me. I don't think anyone's ever written a poem that was to me and about me.
Well, I've written you several poems.
Yeah, but that was like written in like 10 minutes or something. That's pretty impressive.
It flowed out.
And you made me sound like a nice person.
Well, I need to because this is like for the public's eye.
I got to manage my brand, guys.
I mean, imagine if you guys all knew really what went on behind the scenes. I'm just joking.
Well, speaking of behind the scenes,
Yeah.
I think today we actually wanted to get a little bit serious with our followers.
We do. So we decided to get dressed up like Barbie and get serious.
Yeah, because Barbie has a job too.
Yes, she does.
We're going through like
To
middle.
look anatomically incorrect is
Right,
basically her job.
Well, that's actually not far from my actual anatomical figure.
Oh, anatomical figure. Oh, hers?
Mine.
Oh, because
I have no torso.
Well, you are tall though. That's because your legs and boobs. Legs, boobs, head.
Okay, thank you.
I get it.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So what I wanted to actually talk about, which I don't think a lot of people know this aspect of us, and we certainly were with some colleagues recently at some work type of networking events where they
We
were
were.
they were like, why would you leave a big sexy job at a big well-known company to do what you're doing right now?
Mm-hmm.
And that really kind of struck a chord with me because I was like, people don't actually kind of understand why we make the choices we make to do what we do. And then there's this other aspect of it that I thought would be helpful because there are I think there's like 31 million people in the US workforce are comprised of entrepreneurs,
Yes.
people building new companies, and why they do that, and what does it involve, and what do we have to sacrifice? And
Sure.
I just thought that would be a great thing for you and I in our very unique experiences
To
share.
discuss and share, and hopefully maybe inspire others.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, look,
Because it's not easy.
it is not easy.
It's not easy.
And you do have to have certain things in place in order to do that. So especially for some of our, younger kind of followers and listeners, and there's quite a few of you out there, hopefully this can give you some tools in your toolkit to think about in terms of what do I need to do in order to kind of take that risk.
Yeah. And I think also, our earlier careers coming from the entertainment world help to develop some thick skin. So when you're an entrepreneur, the hardest thing to do is be able to deal with all of really the negativity and or criticism and people almost kind of, I think, hoping that you're going to fail, right?
Well, rejecting.
Constant
rejection.
Constant rejection. Absolutely. There's,
So I thought it'd be interesting to for people to understand, what was your first job? What did you do? Why did you do it?
well, it depends on what we say as first job.
Okay, not when you were selling
So-
Christmas trees. Okay, I'm talking
well,
about
I was like, my first like job,
college.
I was either 8 or 11. I forget which. I was selling Christmas trees.
Well, if I count
Yeah.
my first job,
I worked at a
was
hardware store.
teaching piano lessons.
Worked with my cousin as a carpenter. Was a lifeguard, personal trainer.
Okay, we're not talking about those. I'm
Okay.
talking about real job.
My first real job. I mean, technically, I'm trying to think. Would Electric Lady be considered my first real
Yes.
job? Probably.
Yes.
19. Hooked up with a gig at Electric Lady, which is Jimi Hendrix's
Yeah,
studio.
I was
for
gonna say,
those
why don't
who-
you
who
tell
didn't
us
know.
about Electric Lady Studios
Yeah, it was a
and
great
why
place.
it was a big deal.
Yeah, so I remember interviewing for the position, and I happened to have a little bit of a hookup through my cousin who had his company had done some work for the owner's place, and so he had asked the manager of the studio if they could just speak with me because I had been involved in music. I had with my band we'd produced. Back when it was a lot harder to produce albums, nowadays you have home studios. Back then you really didn't have home studios. You had like a 4-track cassette recorder, and that's all you had access to. And so we had gone into studios when I was really quite young and recording demos. Basically back in the early days when I was in high school and even junior high.
I remember those early album covers you showed me.
Yeah.
I was like, Greg wore baggy jeans.
Yeah.
When was that?
Back in the very early 90s, late 80s. And so that was the look back then. And so I had experience in studios. I had experience producing and engineering and songwriting, arranging, and all those different pieces. And also I had a technology background, but also an electrical background. So I was always that kid that people came to, because I was always building speakers, building speaker cabinets, working on guitars. So if someone needed a new pickup put into their guitar, if they wanted it done just cheaply, they would just come to me and I would just go and solder in a new pickup. I could always fix things. So I kind of had all this like interesting experience. So when I interviewed for the position, I was discussing all this experience that I had. And so I started as a GA, which was a general assistant, then made my way up to a second engineer, which is, assistant, which is working with the engineers, recording basically at the time the biggest albums that were released
So-
with all the biggest producers, the biggest bands.
I have a question for you.
Yeah.
It sounds like you did a lot of grind work.
Oh, it's grunt work. So when you start, so back in the day, at Electric Lady, what was interesting is it doesn't matter what your background was or is, you started at the bottom. So an example is, I remember, so I
What's
left
the bottom?
at grunt work. being a runner. And so I'm going to give you an example of being at the bottom. So I had left Electric Lady, moved, kind of more into the music industry. And I remember coming back to Electric Lady one day to record, and I'm like, wait a minute, that's one of the members of the Psychedelic Furs. He's on his knees and he's scraping cement off of bricks. And I'm like, what is he doing? He's like, oh yeah, he's our new GA. I'm like, wait a minute, you're telling me one of the largest bands of the 80s. He's like, yeah, he wanted to really get into production. And so being an Electric Lady, it doesn't matter who you were, what you did in the past, no matter what, you started at the bottom. And so the studio was going through some fixes. There were a little bit of construction work, and what they want to do is retain the integrity of the bricks that were there and then reutilize some of those bricks. So they were actually scraping off the cement off the bricks.
What?
So then the bricks could be reused.
Did they not?
And he was there scraping the cement
enough,
off the bricks.
I'm sorry. Why don't they hire a construction company?
The construction company is the one who did the building. But then also it's all about costs, right? It's all about costs. As any corporate entity knows, it's all about cost cutting. And mitigating your financial risk. And so I showed up. I'm like, wait, why are you there?
Like abusive labor.
Yeah, it's totally abusive, and also verbal abuse too. So I dealt with it was definitely abuse. Like we used to carry. So the studio, it was 3 floors, and so when you walked in, it was great. Still today, one of the greatest studios, Studio A. Love recording that room. I feel there isn't a better sounding room to record a drum kit in, and that's because it was always said the Monetta Creek kind of runs through there, and there's like this natural humidity in the room, and then there's a spirit of Jimmy in that whole place, and anyone who's ever worked there will know exactly what I'm talking about. We're all connected on some level via the spirit of Jimmy, and just the rooms were just great rooms.
Did you ever get to meet Jimmy?
No, he died before I was born. Actually, he died the year I was born, I think.
I thought he died in the 80s. Oops.
No, he died in the 70s. I think he died. He died right before the studio opened. He died right before the grand opening of the studio. And so I was kind of down this story. So we were talking, so this is what we're talking about. So we used to, the studio, so when you walked in, Studio A and B were downstairs, and then up a floor was offices, which are now other production rooms, and then there was a third floor, which had another studio. Back in the day, everything was done on analog, and then all of a sudden, there was a new tape machine that came out, which was like a 1/2-inch digital tape. Analog. So back in the day, albums were recorded on what were called 2-inch reels, which was actual 2-inch tape that held that you recorded onto, and you would typically need 2 tape machines because they each would have like 24 tracks each. Put them together, and you have 48 tracks. So everything was truly bespoke. And when you edited back then, you actually took the tape, put it over a metal plate, and then you'd actually physically splice it, and then put it back together, tape it, and that's how you would edit. Tape back in the day.
I mean, that's how they made movies, too.
That's how they made movies. The same concept. So everything was done manually and bespoke. So all of a sudden, the studio happened to have this new cutting-edge tape machine. This is before Pro Tools even existed. And so this new cutting-edge tape machine that came in, and it was a 1/2-inch tape, digital, but the thing weighed I think it was like 500 pounds. And because
500 pounds?
It was something outrageous, like
an elephant?
Yeah, it was like 400 or 500 pounds. It was outrageous. So what we used to do is that if the tape machine was all the way downstairs, but someone in C needed it, we would actually have to. We only had a lift that went up to the main floor. So we used to bring it up to the main floor on a lift, and then from there we used to have to go up like these just flights of stairs. So we used to put it on a hand truck, and there'd be 4 of us, 2 on top, 2 on the bottom, lifting this thing up several flights of stairs to get it to the studio. If that thing happened to fall, it would have crushed the 2 people below it and probably just like killed them. It was crazy. So it was like physical, like mad physical labor. And then also just the verbal abuse was horrible.
So like, okay, this sounds like really like intense.
Yeah.
Way more physically laborious than I think I imagined.
Of course, it's heavy equipment that you're always lifting.
You're
getting yelled at and screamed at for not doing it fast enough.
Because you're a music major, right, at SUNY. Is that what you expected?
Well, I went to both UConn and SUNY. I went to SUNY afterwards. So
were you studying music at that time too?
I was trying to. So when I started Electric Lady, I wasn't studying music from an academic standpoint yet because I was going to UConn, and locally because I couldn't go to stores because I had this internship and we didn't have music classes. So it was after I started going to UConn, which is then I spoke with my guidance counselor, who then went to the dean to petition, because I sat down with my guidance counselor. I said, look, I'm going to this institution. I cannot go to stores. I want a business music degree, as you know. I have a great internship. I said, your job as an institution is to further my career and not impede it. There has to be a way that I can get the degree that I'm looking for from this particular institution. Mm-hmm. And she said, okay, let me petition the dean. Let's write up the reasoning and I'll go petition the dean. And so she went and petitioned the dean, and my guidance counselor came back to me and said, great news. The dean has agreed to do something she said she's never done before. It was like the first of its kind, I guess, where they said you can continue to take your business classes here and you can take your music classes at another credible institution. That other credible institution that I used to live nearby was SUNY Purchase, which was a great studio composition program, also great for acting. And I had to audition to get into that school, but the challenge was every semester when I registered for classes there, and this is back where you couldn't even register online.
Oh, I know. I remember you had to go stand
in lines.
Queue at like this boring ass
and classes could fill
office.
up. Yeah, it would be horrible. Classes could fill up, and so
nothing was online.
Nothing was online. So I used to go stand in line, then try to get into classes. So then I'd finally get into some classes on the music side. Then I'd have to fill out paperwork, send that to UConn. Then UConn had to then approve those classes as part of the curriculum. But the challenge that I had there is that took a few weeks. And now we'd be into the semester of school, and I would find out whether or not those classes would transfer or not. And then if they didn't transfer, which happened, I then had to remove myself from those classes, then go to try to find another class that would, and I'd have to beg the teachers to get in.
Here's my PSA announcement.
Beg them to get in.
New generations of students, you don't even know how lucky you are.
Yes.
And how easy it is.
And at SUNY Purchase, going into music theory classes and just because it's a very competitive school and has great programs. The challenge of entering into a class 3 weeks to a month late, you're so far behind everyone just to get caught up. So now I had to get caught up with everyone, which was extremely challenging while managing UConn, while managing working full time.
Something tells me
really
it was
hard.
Not that hard for you.
It was really hard. No, it was. Well, what made you actually want to know what made it hard? Well, this is what made it hard is when I would get into a class, because of the type of classes that I was entering, is that being a drummer or even trying to even play guitar, those positions would be taken. I'd have to choose an instrument in which I'd never either played before or one that I was less proficient in. So I remember taking this jazz class, and I had to play piano.
Wait, jazz piano?
Jazz piano.
Hard.
Jazz, it's really hard. So
I remember sort of crying when my piano teacher got me playing more jazz, and I was like, I really find this so hard on my hands.
So I would sit in.
It's like my fingers wouldn't move fast enough.
Yeah. And piano's not my main instrument.
No.
And so I would get into these classes, and I remember this one jazz class, and had just great players in it. And then there was a spot for like another pianist. And I tried to step into this class, and it was challenging. I really had to work at it. It took a lot of work to, one, get caught up, let alone keep up with that particular class. So it was hard. And then, as mentioned, being in a professional environment, and anyone who's been in the entertainment world knows this, especially if you worked at Miramax, we'll just say, where, and not even the sexual part of Miramax, just the verbal abuse that I've heard that people get. It's when you go into the entertainment world, you're just constantly getting yelled at, screamed at, belittled. People are dropping the F-bombs at you left and right. Even you could be doing the best work for someone and you're just still getting screamed at. So you develop really thick skin because you have to work really hard. It's laborious, and then you're getting verbally abused on top of it.
Did you ever do those like the mirror affirmations to yourself? So when I was pursuing commercial acting, and I was getting rejected left and right because there was nothing at that time. I'm talking the late 90s. Mm-hmm. There was nothing really there for a South Asian face. Mm. I was always trying to audition in parts that they were trying to make me Hispanic. They came up with this terrible term called, you were going to try to position you as Pan-Asian. I'm like, what the hell does that even mean?
Pan-Asian? That's like general Asian?
Like generally, I'm like any kind of Asian. Like that's weird. Because I think I look very Indian.
I would say so. Yeah.
But I was
You don't look
constantly, I was constantly being pushed to weird casting auditions, and I'm trained as a commercial actor, and it was disheartening, to like be rejected,
Sure.
be told you're not thin enough, go lose 30 pounds, maybe then we'll consider you. By the way, back then I was like a solid like 2, size 2, 0. I was not at all wholesome like this. So imagine being told that when you're in
Yes.
your precious 17, 18, 19-year-old.
Yep.
And so I, at the time,
Well, it's
had
like
an
Devil
acting-
Wears Prada. 0 is the new 2.
Well, it's ridiculous. So at the time, I actually had an acting coach who was like, you're going to be rejected. You're going to be pushed down. You're going to feel like hopeless about what you're doing. But doing a talk to yourself in the mirror at the time, now it's really popular in social. Like we talk about, let's do our morning affirmation. And sometimes it makes me want to gag and throw up.
Sure,
But,
yeah.
it is important to remind yourself that you have something to offer the world. The world may not be ready to receive it.
Yes.
And so I actually did positive affirmations in the mirror.
Really?
Yeah, I don't do it now.
Yeah.
Maybe I should because then I'll be less psycho.
Yep.
But I used to do it when I was pursuing acting because I was rejected on a daily basis.
Interesting. I don't think so. I never did daily affirmations, but for me, as you know, I've always been athletic and I've always worked out. And then I used to, at that point, I would work out, but I'd also run, but I used to meditate. And so I think meditation is
Meditation's another.
It's another.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's about maybe self-affirmation, but at least clearing the mind and recalibrating. So for me, it was meditation and working out that helped. And then also being a drummer, I could pound the shit out of drums. And
Oh, yeah, I know.
as you know, and if I was
And maybe other
frustrated or I
things.
could just really, it's just such a great, and what?
Oh, sorry, I didn't say anything.
Yes, you did. What'd you say?
You can move on.
No, what'd you say?
Go.
Okay.
on.
And so that's also a great way to.
You missed it. No, I'm kidding.
I think I know what you're talking about. Wink, wink,
okay.
nudge, nudge. So anyway, so yes, so I found, but also you didn't really. I feel like back then, it was just. Nowadays, it's people have access. Back then, there were gatekeepers, right? You had to
There
go
were channels.
through. There were
weren't-
channels, but
the
they were held
channels
up
were
by
limited.
gatekeepers,
Yeah.
and you had to start. We'll call it at the bottom, unless you were just a natural like nepo baby. You had to still start at the bottom and work your way through and prove yourself to the gatekeepers to then open up a world to those that can help your career.
Yeah.
In this day and age, because of social and access that we have with the internet, just like that show that we watched a couple episodes of, the other two, where
Oh.
you can have. In that case, their 12-year-old brother released a song and doesn't even know how to sing. He did it as a joke and all of a sudden blew up to be this sensational star.
Like a Bieber.
Like a Bieber. And then all of a sudden, then like later on in an episode, you see him trying to perform live and he's completely off key and has no idea how to sing, right? So digital technology or just technology in general has made the ability to be successful. It's challenging in its own way because
More
it's crowded,
accessible.
but it's more accessible than it was before because you don't have to go through the gatekeepers that you once used to have to go through.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I agree. I'll talk about how I got into
Yeah, so tell
traditional
us. So tell us
corporate.
what was, not even corporate. What was your first job? You just asked me. What was your first job?
my first job was at a modeling and acting placement company called John Robert Powers. They originally were now 100 years ago a beauty school
Oh, that's interesting.
that was started.
Was it powerful?
Like Grace Kelly went there, and a lot of
nice.
famous black and white princesses, I'll call them, were known to have gone to the school. It was about etiquette training. It was how to have a proper posture, etc. And later they evolved to offer acting classes. So my parents knew I was interested in acting. They wanted to support my hobby. And so I went and took some classes for fun there over a summer. And I was like, gosh, I could really I thought I wanted to be a news anchor, but it would be kind of cool if I actually do the acting angle as well. And so while I was in college, I took acting classes there, even script writing, all their type of fun stuff.
Sure.
And got to know the trainers, instructors. And as I went into my junior year of college, they actually were like, we could create an internship where we could use someone with your skills.
Sure.
And because I was a marketing major at that
Which
point.
school, which institution were you going to at that point?
I had transferred out of Rutgers University and put myself into City University of New York. And I changed my major from computer science, pre-med, and math, which is what I was at Rutgers, and recognized that I had no desire to be a computer programmer or a doctor. And to really make sure I pursued the things that are most important to me, I wanted to major in corporate communications and become like a news anchor.
Sure.
And
So pre-med, is that why you're the doctor of love?
you know, I'm actually just the I don't even know what to call myself. You just took me off my course.
I'm sorry.
Dr.
So back
Love.
to,
That would be my middle sister.
yeah.
She's a brain doctor too.
Oh, she has a brain doctor too, yeah.
But
So,
I actually had really wanted to go to NYU. Got in when I wanted to transfer into the school, but the tuition was just far too high. And, you know, my dad had sort of like wasted money sending me to Rutgers for a couple of years already and was like, you need to like figure out what you're doing.
sure.
And so I decided to just, you know what, the same teachers that I met at NYU happen to be teaching at CUNY. And so I decided, why not just go to CUNY?
Sure.
And CUNY was convenient because I took classes weeknights and on the weekends. So that allowed me to pursue my acting career and go on go-sees and casting
Sure.
auditions and
Sure.
fun things like that. So
Go-sees are hard because that's just like, could be for anyone rejection after rejection, right?
it was awful.
Yeah.
And you also have to take off your clothes and pose and do all sorts of, like, you know, they take photos of you and then
Yeah.
they tell you afterwards, yeah, no, thanks, bye. And
Casting
you're not
couch.
even told why. You're just like, rejected. And so, you know, I built thick skin like you did,
Yeah.
doing what I did.
Yep, you have to.
But what I did discover is that I was a good marketer because they gave me the opportunity to create a marketing internship at John Robert Powers.
Oh, that's cool.
And so I did grunt work for a marketer. I helped them establish a telemarketing and lead generation strategy for finding new talent.
Telemarketing,
Yes,
which is still a thing.
I wrote telemarketing scripts. I even got on the phone and telemarketed.
Interesting.
Are you probably learning something new about me right now?
I am.
And then I also helped design our kind of booths for pop-up stands at malls.
Sure.
And I identified the malls that had like a lot of, you know, populations with like younger kids and teenagers that might be interested
Yep.
that could probably use etiquette training. Frankly, a lot of people can.
That was a big way to break artists back in the day, where like a Tiffany or a Debbie Gibson, you know, kind of the mall appearances.
Yeah.
That was a big
So
piece.
it was like I did, you know, boots on the ground work as a marketer. And as I was graduating college, my boss basically was like, "We'd love to hire you full time." So then he
cool.
hired me full time, and all that grunt
Was your
work.
boss John Roberts Powers?
No, he was dead by then.
Oh, was he? Oh, really? Okay.
My the founder of the New York location was actually his name is Jean Piero. Still connected with him today, and he watches our pod. So shout out to you, Jean Piero.
Yeah, you mention his name every once in a
And I called him GP.
while. GP.
And he's this really talented. He was in the fashion industry for decades prior. Worked at Harper's Bazaar. He was editor. Like he, you know, was from
interesting.
Europe. He worked very closely. Like we were connected with Elite, Wilhelmina, all of the big agencies. Next,
Sure.
and so I actually helped him grow his business in the New York office by establishing B2B relationships that, you know, really was about finding new talent, helping them get placed in the right agencies, as well as then at that point, it was amazing. I was 23 years old. I had a job of like a 30-year-old because after doing all that grunt work, I was given the role of marketing director. So I managed all the telemarketers.
Sure.
I managed the staff. I helped drive like our entire B2B and B2C sales and whatnot. So it was really great. And I loved my job there until 9/11 happened. And our building got destroyed because it was across from the second tower.
Oh, so you were working there at that point?
Yes.
I see.
And that is how I ended my kind of, initial introduction into the entertainment
Sure.
business. I shifted into another industry.
Is he
I went
still
corporate.
is he still a like a casting director, or is he retired?
He's
or
retired.
He's retired
He now like lives in Tulum.
Oh,
And
that's nice.
so yeah.
Huh.
And he lives a very happy life.
That's
out in
where
Mexico.
one of your jewelry designers basically spends most
Yes,
of her time
yes.
that you love.
Goldish, which I love.
Yes.
There were some exciting people we found in place. Like Josh
Mm-hmm.
Duhamel was one of the actors
Oh.
during my time there that we've
As in, like, you guys discovered him?
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And he was placed into the soap opera scene.
Oh, he was a soap opera actor
He
first?
was a soap opera actor first.
Oh, interesting. Okay, I
Yes.
didn't know that.
I think his character's name was Leo. If I can't remember, if it was
Leo.
All My Children or General Hospital.
Leo.
I'm very
Really?
much dating myself
General
right now.
Hospital. I think General Hospital's still around, isn't it?
I don't know. They all sort of like went off air, right?
Did they? Well, now they are. Now with
No. They're still Young and the Restless and Bold and the Beautiful.
Oh, you know what? I wasn't going there off air. I was just thinking with the strikes going on right now.
Oh, well, that's a whole other
Yeah, that's a
thing.
whole other. Yeah.
But yeah, and it was, but you learn things when you work in smaller organizations like that. You do the grunt work like we both did.
Learn to be scrappy.
And who would have known that both of us have had the opportunity to lead marketing in big Fortune
Organizations.
500 companies?
Yeah, marketing wasn't even a trajectory for me. For me, I was going into the music industry, and I really quite enjoyed it. I also wanted to be a performer, and then I started getting more involved and was in different bands. Was in a band signed to Warner at one point, and then, as with most bands, just things sort of implode. We'll just say, and then I realized that there's the session musician route.
Yeah.
But I didn't want to be just a session musician. And I think that's mostly just because of my personality. I just like to be the one that's also producing and arranging. And then I started seeing.
I would not, describe you as a small personality. No.
Yes, I'm not a small personality. I'm not the best person to sit there and, hey, just no more wire hangers. So Kirti is doing. So we have a
you have
band.
Sticks. You have Sticks right
I
behind
do.
you.
We have a band that we produce for charity, and so when I would be working with the vocalists to keep everyone on time, or just with the band before I would sit down behind the drum kit, I would make everyone obviously rehearse, and we'd be working on all their different parts, and then we'd come together as a band. And she's making fun of me because as a musician, one thing I've always practiced to is a click track, and to keep everyone on, they make fun of me, Dijo's gonna laugh at this, is, okay, vocalists, let's work on this. Ready? 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, and that would just keep everyone on
We were scared of the Sticks.
the right rhythm. It's not like I beat everyone with sticks, although I probably should have
who
on several
knows?
occasions.
That could have
It
happened.
could have happened, but you guys would have liked it. And so, and so, I remember seeing several interviews, with session musicians and session drummers, and like someone like say Steve Gadd, and the guy was at the time in his mid 60s, and he's talking about how he still has to take these gigs and go on tour, and he'd be on the road for 200 days out of the year just to basically still support his family, support himself. And I just didn't want to be in that position where you're in your 60s, constantly on the road, always away from your family, making, I don't want to say nominal money, because you can make a good amount you can make a great chunk of change as a session musician as well. But I just didn't want to be just a session player. I wanted to be the one kind of producing, working on writing, and kind of building the bands. And so I just happened to, with a love of music, entertainment, fashion because I loved fashion. And at this point, the internet started to proliferate. This is now the mid to late 90s. And I happened to get involved into an internet position at a startup that was all about music, fashion, gaming, and just overarching entertainment. And that was my foray in
I
to
want to
marketing.
dig in. I want to
technically.
dig in, not so much into like the company itself, but how you made this choice to take the chance to join a startup, what that means versus, hey, let me find a job at an established, larger company, maybe with a little bit more security.
Yeah. So for me, I actually never wanted to be in a corporate organization.
You still don't.
I still don't. I loathed corporate organizations. That just wasn't my thing. It was the last thing I ever really wanted to do. What drove me into the industry, we'll just say, is at the time I was still living in Connecticut. I wanted to move into New York City, but I loved technology, loved the internet and what it was doing, and it was just starting to proliferate, and found a company that was aligned with what I wanted to do, because we were working with other organizations like GenR or Cornerstone and these other organizations, and putting together fashion shows, right? We were working in the music industry.
Did you see any famous fashion models?
I'm sure I did back in the day. Throughout my career, I've been around an immense amount of famous individuals. I don't even remember half the people that I've ever met.
I think the best story is still, maybe because I'm like biased, is the fact that you've like performed with or worked with Depeche Mode.
Oh yeah,
Like
I love Depeche Mode.
I was obsessed with Depeche Mode growing up.
That was one of the many artists that I've worked with.
But
yeah.
And you like never show off about it ever. I'm kind of like, babe, you should tell the story.
Well, no. What's funny with Depeche Mode is, so they came to New York. I was young. I was still a teenager. They came to New York City. They were recording at different studios. I think they were in Europe prior. Dave Gahan was still recovering from like a suicide attempt, getting off
drugs and
getting
dying.
off of heroin, and just the band was at a turbulent time. And so they came to Electric Lady again for like that spirit, right? And I happened to be put on the session for a few days because one of the other second engineers that was there couldn't make it, and so I was on that session for a little bit. And I remember working with them, and it was just a really challenging session. He wasn't really singing well. At that point, they were just trying to piece together different vocal pieces. And at the time, they were all about music programming, like programming drums and everything of that nature, because it was just they were part of that 80s sound that moved into the 90s, and it was still all about electronics. And so I'm sitting there trying to convince them at one point that they needed a live drum kit. So like this 19-year-old kid telling Depeche Mode, late 90s, you guys ever think about incorporating real drums into your music? And because I got to know them, right? And so got to know the different members, Fletcher, Martin, and Dave. And so we're chatting about it, and they like looked at me as though I was from like another planet. Live drums? No, never. And so, but we would like joke around about it. And then they ended up completing the album. It was released, and years later, all of a sudden now you go to a Depeche Mode concert, and what do they have? They have a live drummer. So with it was part of the live band. So it's kind of funny.
Like a working experience with Depeche Mode.
Yeah.
And do you remember when we were?
I used to work with every major artist during that era. Pretty much, that came through.
And remember when we were in the Hamptons with Pooch? Mm-hmm. She also shared her Depeche Mode story because when she was a runway model,
that's right,
in Italy, she ended up like being invited to this like backstage experience as like a bunch of models who were invited, and Depeche Mode wanted Indian food catered. So she was like, "Oh my God, real food for once," because the whole time she was in Milan, she had no real food because the models are not.
Because the models are not, champagne and tissues, right? Isn't that what they eat tissues and drink champagne?
Right. If you want to call it tissues.
If you want to call it tissues.
But so like
that's kind of
funny. So
funny.
here's the thing.
Yeah.
I think there are certain people built for startup, or even I'll call it high risk company opportunities.
Sure.
Versus those who are not. And I feel like when I think about not to get technical or geeky, but when I think about your resume, you definitely have taken more high risk opportunities throughout your career.
High risk because I grew up as an entrepreneur, right?
Yeah.
So just being younger, I remember back in high school, my friend Chris Baker and I decided to start our own car detailing company, like that we would do after school, right? So I was always doing something that was entrepreneurial. Even my earlier bands, I was like managing the marketing piece. I was the one kind of driving us into the studio, booking our gigs, like things of all that nature. So I was always that type of person. And so with an entrepreneurial spirit, I enjoy building something versus coming back again to the studio musician piece. I don't enjoy just being told, just go do this. I prefer building. And so that's just kind of innate to who I am as an individual. And I've always been one just to take risks because I just think that's, for me personally, that's just healthy in life. Always pushing yourself. And I think that's why I've excelled as a musician. That's why I've excelled at different areas of my life because I'm constantly pushing myself. And it's the entrepreneurial spirit in me that continues my influencer, gives me my energy to always kind of push forward and always look at what could be done next. And I think that's an entrepreneurial mindset. So I've always taken that path for the most part in my career versus going large corporate Fortune 50 based companies.
Yeah.
And the larger companies that I've been part of essentially were because I was with a smaller organization that was purchased or I kind of happened to fall into.
Well, so what are 3 things you love about the startup environment and maybe 3 things you love about?
Instead of me answering that
Established.
question, let's flip that over to you for a sec.
Oh.
Because you have gone an entrepreneurial path, but then when I first met you, you were, even though it was still a private company, it was still a large corporate organization, Oppenheimer Funds, right? And then you moved from Oppenheimer Funds to, was it Russell, which was next? And then obviously BNY Mellon. And then you went from major corporations with very senior positions to, I'm going to go give the startup world a shot, right? And so you moved into the startup world and moving from a company that has clout to a company, we'll just say, because when you're in a startup world, it's when you're at a larger organization, everyone's like, ooh, you're at that organization and we want to do business with you. You go to a startup, no one wants anything to do with you
I think it's because they also don't understand us.
they don't understand it, but they don't understand until that company becomes something or has some buzz about it. No one wants anything to really do with it, right? So it's a hard, heavy lift to get a startup to that point. So for you, going from that world into the new world, I'm really interested in hearing more about your career trajectory and why you decided to maybe later in life go that route. But then number 2, answer your own questions in that capacity.
Oh, damn it. You're throwing the ball back in my court?
I am, and then I'll answer them after you.
I like being anchor woman, right? And ask the questions.
Anchor woman. Well, I could be anchor man.
You can, unfortunately.
I'll just be less misogynistic.
Please. It's not an attribute that I'm drawn to for sure. So for me, I think growing up in a family where predominantly everyone's a doctor, and we've got lawyers aplenty back in India, major law firms and stuff, and judges and all that. Being a marketer was just new to the whole family, right? But as a marketer, I think I love being a marketer, and I think what I love about that is the idea. I had this dream, right, when I was in college of I want to be a marketer at a P&G company or or a luxury brand.
Like a Procter and Gamble company?
Yeah,
like CPG,
I
the
want
world
to
of
sell cereal.
CPG.
Or
you want to sell cereal?
Or the other extreme.
Is that why you eat cereal like twice a day?
I love cereal. Cereal is like the best food ever.
What's your favorite cereal?
Cinnamon Toast Crunch.
Ooh.
We talked about this before.
I know, but I just wanted everyone
And Raisin Bran.
Ra-
I know.
Who eats Raisin Bran?
I love Raisin
That's like for like 75-year-olds who
So
have like
good. Raisin Bran with
colon
the crunch.
issues.
Who does not like Raisin
Yeah.
Bran with their little crunch?
Have you had colon blow yet? Or super colon blow?
What the hell is that?
Anyone?
My ass is not going to blow out.
If anyone knows that reference back from the earlier, I don't want to say earlier, but like back in the SNL days, probably, I don't know, the 90s, they, how they run their little commercials, their satires. One of them happened to be colon blow. one bowl of colon blow is equal to 500 bowls of the closest fiber cereal.
You know
and then
what?
they have super colon blow.
Not that people need to know this about me, but it does keep me regular, and it's fine to be regular.
Yeah, regular.
It's
Okay.
important for our
I know.
body.
Yes, I can see that. Yes.
Anyway, so I think I dreamt about.
Colon blow?
Now I'm thinking about that. I think I dreamt about the idea of like, gosh, I want to be. I never thought about being CMO, by the way. I just thought about I want to manage a really cool brand
Sure.
and drive their growth or do sexy commercials and all this stuff. As you know, that did not happen. I ended up in beloved financial services.
The financial world, yes.
But I really kicked off my career at Citibank, which I still think was the
I forgot about Citibank.
best
Yeah.
breeding ground for my personal ambitions and career. They were supportive on so many levels, and I really also owe that to the amazing leadership and managers I had, who are still blossoming all over the place today, like Melissa Stuckey-Stevens, who's leading the charge at
Sure.
Fifth Third Bank. And then there's Liza Landsman, who just keeps rocking it. Really pragmatic and super intelligent women
Sure.
that gave me a platform to
Was
learn.
that back when that was the only tall building in Long Island City?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. I was going out there when it was creepy on the subway, and it was worth it. But I learned so much about what it really is like to be a marketer when you don't have a tangible product.
Sure.
And I think the complexity of working in companies that sold intangible products really drove my creativity.
So they sold vaporware.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
It's like smoke
Huh.
and mirrors.
Smoke.
But my point is, I never thought I'd actually end up being a financial services marketer. And I'm really proud of the skills I've actually developed over
Sure.
the course of my career in those big companies, working across different functions. And I had no ambition of wanting to be a CMO. In fact, as you know, I avoided CMO type roles the last several years.
That is true. You have.
Because I felt CMO is a soul-sucking job where you're just defending dollars, working on operations, and you lose all access to being a part of the creative process.
Yeah, I agree with you. And yeah, it's exactly what it is. It's protecting the team. It's defending your dollars, defending the function, and just being operational.
Yeah.
Essentially.
Yeah.
It does it. It kind of strips the
joy.
the joy or the creativity out of you.
Yeah. And for that reason, after having been quite successful in major Fortune, whatever, 100 brands, whether they're private or public entities, I decided I want to build something.
Sure.
I have learned a lot. I also felt like I could learn more. And learning more doesn't come from being in something that's already built, but building something.
So you like Richard Gere and Pretty Woman and had an epiphany where
did.
you go from being a corporate raider to, I think I want to build something.
I do. I had my Richard Gere moment.
I see.
Okay. And, this whole thing with blockchain started to come to fruition. And I was exposed to it back in 2012 when, the first paper had come out on
Sure.
Bitcoin and all that. And I was like drawn to it back then. But fast forward to 2017, I was still very much intrigued and interested in this whole world of AI and machine learning and technology. And I had a chance. I there was a startup that seemed like it was reasonably funded. My entire career, I've always had to be the secure, steady earner
Sure.
because I was the dependable income breadwinner, whatever
Yeah,
you want to call it.
Totally.
And I was now taking high risk, a single working mom. But I felt like I had amassed a certain amount of savings and wealth.
Sure. Yeah.
And I was in a good position. I was paying my mortgage. I own a home. Like I was doing things on my own. And I want to do something interesting.
Yeah.
And so I joined a really small little boutique blockchain company that had a lot of literal and figurative manpower behind it.
Sure. Yeah. And some big personalities.
And big personalities. And you know, they are successful today. They launched and did everything. Fast forward a few years later. But I got to build something while I was there with them.
Sure.
I got to learn something new. Unfortunately, the pandemic happened.
Yes.
And I was kind of sucked back into corporate America, I'll call it. And what I recognized in that experience at that moment when I was sucked back in is I need to take on jobs that allow me to do something that fulfill me as a human being.
Yes.
That I have spent my entire life as a professional, which is more than half my life at this point. I was like, I have helped the high net worth amass more wealth, or the wealthy become wealthier.
Yeah.
And it really, I want to do something where I'm creating solutions to really fix problems.
Sure.
So I was drawn back out from my really high profile job at BNY Mellon
Yes.
to do that.
Yep.
And does a part of me regret it? I only regret it for missing the people and the team that I built. But I don't regret it in terms of what I'm getting to do right now.
Sure. Yeah.
And I don't mean to sound altruistic, but it takes grit. It's taking high risk.
Yep.
I don't sleep a lot of nights.
Yeah.
But that's why they have under eye concealer.
It's emotionally challenging. It's
a roller coaster.
It's an absolute roller coaster. And well, what you just even mentioned, and because we're both in startups right now, we both have come out of corporate organizations where, you know, we were paid quite well. And when you're paid quite well, you invest in your life. And you mentioned like buying a place and other, you know, investing in other areas. And so you have a certain lifestyle, and then all of a sudden you go to a startup and it may not be able to support that lifestyle anymore. So you have to make certain changes in life because you're banking on the bigger picture, which is, can this company be successful? Because there's an element of equity. But what I've learned along the way, and I've been at, you know, you've heard me say this multiple times, I've been on the startup level, the mid-sized company, and the enterprise level organization. Each one has their own challenges and each one has their own way of functioning, but there are some similarities. But one thing I have learned, because I have been in organizations that have been that have offered a great culture, and others that have offered the most toxic cultures that I've ever, you know, been part of. And where I am right now in my life is I look for a few things. One truly is a company that I'm going to be part of. Do they have a great product? And do I believe in that product?
Yeah.
And is it driving the future of business? I don't want to be with an old antiquated company that's just stuck in their ways, and then they become like Tower Records and go the way of the dodo because they...
Or Kodak.
Or Kodak or Blockbuster. Blockbuster could have been Netflix,
Yep.
right? And so these companies that just unfortunately become obsolete. So for me, is this product driving the future? Also, is it helping to democratize? I want to be part of something that's helping the world become a better place. Secondly, is the culture. And is it a great place to work? Do you want to be part of that team?
Do you like the people?
Do you like the people? And I've learned that those two things, when combined, is a much better working environment than the money. I've taken gigs for the money, been the worst places I've ever been, and I've
100%.
taken gigs that have paid me less that have been the best. So I've completely shifted my priorities in moving forward. It's obviously we want to make enough so we can support our family and support the investments that we have.
Well, but here's the
This is
thing.
expensive, but
I think those are really good things for us to be aiming for. But I think it'd be also helpful to share with folks what it takes in order to choose to do that, right? I think we come from a culture, especially if you're working in traditional companies, and even in terms of personal lifestyle, I think there's this notion of immediate gratification.
yes, yeah.
And, you know,
Which
I
isn't the
wanted it
case.
and I wanted it yesterday. But if you enter this environment of building something with a founder or founding something on your own as an entrepreneur, it's not for you if you're looking for immediate gratification.
No, it's not.
Even us working and building on this pod, we're doing it in an organic fashion,
Yeah, we
right?
are.
We won't. It's not going to be about immediate gratification. It's about being committed, doing it for the long haul,
And being authentic to who we are.
Yes.
People are either going to like it or they're not going to like it.
But you have to be
And
patient.
You have to be patient.
But you also have to be patient with a lens for identifying moments of failure. And what I mean by that is because a lot of startups tend to go into this, I heard this term recently, they go into the living dead mode because they're like, oh, this didn't work. Let's just keep going. Let's just do it this way now. Let's keep going. It's going to work this time. So you also have to know when to exit.
So are you saying like zombie mode as in they
Yes.
keep doing the same thing over and over?
Well, there's the same thing over and over. Or they think this didn't work. Let's try this angle, and they keep going at it
With
for
the same
another-
product?
with maybe modifying the product
I
or
see.
like, but they keep staying with their vision.
Well, isn't that the
But the
definition
vision-
of insanity, right? Where you keep doing the same thing,
but
but
you know, there's
hope
a
for
lot
a
of
different
startups.
result?
A lot of startups do this.
Yes, they do.
And then they're like, let me get another million. Let me get. So like recently, I left a startup before I joined the SPAC I'm at right now. I saw that like in the writing. You know, I was like, their KPIs are not being addressed.
Sure.
So therefore, this is not going to be working out in the long term.
Yeah, yep.
Like to your point, the product needs to be defined and it needs to be addressing a real solution for the marketplace. Not just because, hi, I built it, I made it, so cometh.
Yes.
And so
I've been with organizations like that,
Yes, we
especially
both
ones,
have.
especially startups that have been. No offense to engineering teams, I love engineering teams. Someone who's always actually defending throughout my career, defending the technology teams because I have an understanding of technology, and when you build something, it's not always going to work perfectly. So I'd always be the team, like in marketing, in a marketing function, always defending the technology teams. But I've been with organizations where it's been helmed by the head of technology,
Yeah.
and they have that mindset of
Build it, they
if we
come in.
build it, they will come. We don't care about advertising. We don't care about sales. We don't care about marketing. Our product is what we have built is better than anything else.
It'll sell
It'll
itself.
sell itself. And you don't happen to those companies I was with, they tanked.
yeah.
Tanked.
So
Completely tanked.
these are just things to be aware of. And no matter what someone tells me going into these type of environments, it is 100% high risk. There's no medium, there's no low risk.
No,
You could do
it's
your
high risk.
homework, right? Like, oh, they're funded by the right VC, or they have like the right X million dollars for a trajectory to build and launch in the next 5 years. It's all high risk.
It's all high. Even so, what happened to me recently? I joined an organization that was looking to expand into the U.S. Invested in by one of the largest,
A very well-known
investor, probably one of the largest in the world, also known for losing billions on a regular basis, but they still invest heavily. And they invested, and then literally 2 months later, all of a sudden we identified, and the company identified right now, because of market conditions, wasn't the best time to expand into an already crowded marketplace. And what happens? Rug pull, the company completely shut down.
Yep.
Out of nowhere. But we had made decisions based upon that particular job. So one thing about being an entrepreneur or start joining a startup, we'll just say, at least from my experience, the older that you get and the more responsibility that you have to start to assume makes it even more risky. It's always a risk, but makes it more
100%.
risky. Because being in my early 20s, when I didn't have a child, now we have a family, we have 2 children together. You didn't own you didn't own really anything necessarily quite yet. You have just your sole responsibility. And it's a lot easier to sustain your own life in being risky versus later in life when you take a risk, you have many other responsibilities to other people and other debts that you might have due to ownership of things that you have to take into consideration. And it creates a whole other world of stress.
So I think it's good for us to maybe leave people with a few tips.
Okay.
When they're thinking about pursuing an entrepreneurial path or a traditional path, whatever makes them happy. First and foremost, Don't go with what one individual may lead you to think about the company you're interested in joining. It's important to talk to the advisor, the board director. Just try to talk to as many people as possible. Just don't go by, hey, we are funded by X dollars. Maybe find out who at those different VCs or private equity firms might be funding it. Get more information.
Well, it's all about getting more information, but it's also about, as you were saying, just being realistic about the company. It's very easy to get caught up in a startup and in a wow factor of maybe what they're doing, but you also need to assess, really, is there a market need for it? What is the competitive landscape? Is it too ahead of its time? And what I mean by too ahead of its time, I'm going to just do a music reference. So take like a band like, Jane's Addiction back in the day. They were always considered to be ahead of their time in terms of their sound, which is why they didn't take off necessarily as large as Red Hot Chili Peppers and others, right?
I didn't know that.
So and that happens in music all the time. It's all about the right place and in the right time. Also, another tip is to not be mesmerized by the stock options that you get. One, because there's different types.
That's a really good point.
Yeah, there's different types of stock options. There's preferred stock options, which pretty much investors get, and then there's other options. And you might be lured with a package that includes a large set of options, but those options are actually meaningless unless, one, the company's either sold and or you go public. And then if you decide to leave the organization before your options have vested, you lose them. And then even if you leave the organization after they have vested, in order to retain those options, you actually have to pay out of pocket for those options.
Yeah.
And so that may not be attainable. So say you get 100,000 options, and say they're $1 a piece, and you vest, you leave. To retain those options, you have to shell out $100,000, right? So one thing to be cognizant of is just look at the total package. Is it a product you feel that you're excited about? Is it a great team to work with? And is the package commensurate with your experience? And yes, it may be weighted for options, but if you believe in the product and it's the right market fit and you think it's the right team that can go there, absolutely take it. Most of the companies, I think there's only been, of all the startups I've been with, only one company I've been able to exercise the options. Only one of them. And that was IGN when we were bought by Fox.
Wow.
And I've been with several.
And you've been with so many.
I have given back to organizations millions of options.
That's crazy.
Crazy. And one other company that I was with was bought. I'd already left the organization, and I'm glad that I left the organization purposefully. And when I left the organization, they were kind of going down. And then when they were purchased at a fire sale, where their options at one point were technically worth a few dollars a piece, that were then sold for pennies. So it would have been a loss.
That's a great learning lesson.
So yes. So
that brings me to the next tip, which is don't undersell yourself for how much cash you actually need in hand. Because that means you need to have enough savings or cash, accessible cash.
You need reserves.
Right.
Always have
in order
reserves.
to actually make ends meet while you're waiting for this company to launch or take off.
That's another great example, is because it's a startup, you may be on a payment schedule, but depending on that startup, and funding could be cut technically at any time, or there could be other issues, and you may be expecting a paycheck on the 15th and 30th. All of a sudden, you may get notice, we're not going to pay you for another month or two. And now you have to be able to carry yourself off your savings in order to make it to that next paycheck.
Which brings me to my next point. Always have a minimum of at least a year of savings in hand if you're going to pursue something like this. It could take you in any direction, right? And as Greg just said, so
I think that's great advice, though, for
in
whether
general,
or not, in
like
general,
wealth
whether you're going to a startup or not.
Did you know I have a wealth management background?
I might have heard a rumor.
Oh.
Really? When did you start in wealth management?
So it's, all of these little personal tidbits really help shape and inform what you can do or what you can't do.
Yes.
And it's not for everyone. And my last tip is this shit does not happen overnight.
No, it doesn't.
So if you're in it for immediate gratification, it's not for you.
Yeah.
It really isn't.
It's hard work. also, you have to be, typically in a startup, depending on the size of the startup, you have to be multifaceted. And it's incredibly hard to grow a team in a smaller based environment because you need to hire people that are multifaceted because the functions aren't defined yet.
Right.
And then as you start to mature as an organization, then you can start to delineate the responsibility and then actually bring in these multiple functions.
That's why I say you gotta put those rubber gloves on.
Yeah.
And you got to get your hands dirty and be able to do anything that is asked of you to do.
Well, even something as simple as like what we're doing here with God Spice, or even the organizations we're with right now, we were at larger corporate organizations where when you're sitting in a CMO role, we mentioned it's operational and others are actually handling individual functions as part of that department. So you're used to assigning
Can
roles.
I just say something? In our CMO roles, we didn't have the opportunity to just be operational.
No, it's not just operational, but you still have to be. So one thing about
But we
marketing,
definitely have,
you still have
like,
to be in the weeds. You have to be
SMEs.
both. So you have to be in the weeds to understand what's kind of really going on and be part of it. Yes, 100%. Yeah, but you have subject matter experts, right, that are there. But when you're in a startup, you have to be the subject matter expert in everything. And then also, if you're doing it and you're coming from the corporate world, you have to relearn to like roll up the sleeves and actually do all of the tactics yourself that maybe an agency once used to do for you.
Listen, I've re-embraced my editing and Photoshop skills.
Mm-hmm. You have. And you're quite good at it.
I mean, hopefully you guys enjoy what we watch.
Yes, absolutely. So what we're saying is joining the startup world is awesome and fascinating. It's risky. Know what you're getting into. It's a different vibe than a corporate organization. It could be a whole other like world of reward, emotionally, physically, financially, and we wholeheartedly endorse it. But it's not easy.
It's not made for everyone.
It's not made for everyone.
Although it was an interesting stat I'm going to leave you all with. What percentage of millionaires are represented by entrepreneurs?
By entrepreneurs, what percentage? I'm going to say by entrepreneurs. What year is this stat? Is it a new stat?
It's a new stat.
So if it's a new stat, entrepreneurs, if it was years ago, I would throw it a different, but if a new stat, I'm going to say 60%.
88%.
88%.
So, but you don't do it to get rich.
Yeah.
You become an entrepreneur
Some
because you
people
want
do.
to build something.
Some people do.
I mean,
Yeah.
sure. Just can't build anything.
Yeah. But I agree with you there because the way I always looked at everything that I have always done, I haven't looked at it from the lens of making money. I looked at it from the lens of if you can build something great and it can appeal to people, or you build this bridge between audiences and it's something that everyone can be part of, the money comes naturally.
I agree. And that's a wrap.
Back.